Now, emotion is our body's feedback system to a message. Now, you know the saying, don't kill the messenger just because you don't like the message. Emotional intelligence is your ability to focus on the message and not worry about who the messenger is and why that messenger is coming and taking. If you take your frustration or your negative response or reaction to the messenger without taking the message, that is when your emotional intelligence is low. This is a trained skill. Just like how you develop your muscles, you can develop your emotional intelligent muscle. Always try to understand if something triggers you. Always go to the question. Don't ask why is this person triggering me. Ask what traits in that person and why is that trait triggering me to this kind of emotions. And it doesn't mean you should not feel angry or you should not feel frustrated. It's very important you feel frustrated and angry, but in that process immediately get the message and move out of it. But if you stay stuck there, it is not helping.
In today's fast-paced world, we often hear the term emotional intelligence everywhere, from leadership workshops to wellness conversations. But what does emotional intelligence truly mean through the Ayurvedic lens? In this episode, we explore the concept of emotional intelligence, the inner strength of the mind that helps us perceive clearly, respond wisely, and stay rooted even when life feels chaotic. Ayurveda reminds us that emotions are messages, signals from our inner world asking for attention, understanding, or change. And our work is not to silence them or suppress them or kill the messenger, but to listen with awareness and compassion. Let's explore how we can do this.
A very warm welcome to all of you to Ayurvedic Healing and Beyond podcast, and this is your host Dr. Vignesh Devraj. In today's episode, we're going to discuss about what it means to have emotional intelligence. Now, people say, oh, that person is very intelligent, very smart. But emotional intelligence is something very different, and it's a skill that we all can develop. Of course, your growing up and your environment when you grew up and how you saw your parents or your peers or your friends or people whom you considered to have a lot of power, how they behaved did impact on how you considered what your emotional reaction and response is. But this is always that can be unlearned and relearned, and you can really equip your emotional intelligence. So let's understand some of the basics. What exactly is an emotion? Now, emotion is our body's feedback system to a message. You know the saying, don't kill the messenger just because you don't like the message. And if you look at some of the if you look at some of the top civilizations, how they self-destroyed themselves, it is when people at the top of the civilization, when they stop taking feedbacks. So emotion is like a feedback about a message. Like if somebody is coming and giving you a message, something that you did is not right. And if you're going to get angry with that person, instead of taking what that actually messages, then we have a problem. And that is when our emotional intelligence is low. So if I have to put it in a very simplistic manner, emotional intelligence is your ability to focus on the message and not worry about who the messenger is and why that messenger is coming and taking. If you take your frustration or your negative response or reaction to the messenger without taking the message, that is when your emotional intelligence is low. Whereas on the other hand, somebody comes and gives you a message, and maybe it's a positive message or not so good message for you. But if you just focus on why is this message, what is this message about, what can I do with this message, if you're focusing on the actionable inputs, or maybe I don't need to do anything and you become just passive about that message, that is again what is emotional intelligence. Hello everyone, today I would like to share an information about our upcoming 14-day immersive Ayurvedic retreat in Goa. Now, this is my first interactive workshop style retreat, but I will be personally guiding each guest throughout the stay. Now, along with the Ayurvedic and Panchakarma treatments that I will be designing for you, we will also be engaging with scheduled lectures and interactive workshops on Ayurveda, healthy habits, bulletproofing yourself from burnout, and most importantly, integrating spirituality in daily life. The whole purpose of this retreat is not just to get the best Panchakarma treatments, but to go back with a completely new outlook of health and connection with your true authentic self. Now, the retreat is scheduled to start on 22nd December of 2025 until 5th of January 2026. It's exactly 14 days. Now, this is an exclusive retreat, which means the whole property where the retreat is going to happen is reserved only for the workshop participants. Now, the location for this retreat, this is our newly launched Sitaram Ayurveda Experiences at the Postcard Old Goa. Now, as we have only 6 rooms here, we can only take up to 10 guests maximum to ensure personalized attention and privacy to each of our guests. To know more about the details of this workshop, so the ability to focus on the message and not worry about who the messenger was and why is this messenger saying and should I kill that messenger. This is how good emotional intelligence is, focusing on that message. Now, let me give you a few examples. Now, let's take one example like, let's say fear, for example. Now, fear is a emotion. Now, you are looking at a threat, and that threat is a message that you are receiving out of fear. Fear is like the emotion that is giving you the message. There is a threat, you need to take action. Sometimes that message of threat can come through a person, can come through a news, can come through various way, or maybe it's a real life threat, or sometimes it can be a perceived threat. But that ability to identify, is this a real threat? And what should I do? How do I prepare? And how do I equip myself to face this threat? That is emotional intelligence. And not, blaming the person who came with that threat. Then we miss the whole point. Now, let's take, for example, guilt, for example. Now, guilt is a very common problem, especially with all the mind-body connection, positive psychologists they talk about. And if you look at how guilt can, create a lot of problems in the body, which can lead to tumor, later into cancer. Now, what is the message of guilt? Guilt is trying to say, somewhere I broke my standards and I'm not living up to it. And because of this, I need to punish myself, or I cannot accept myself, or I cannot forgive myself. So this is what the guilt, the message of guilt is. But what people do, I did something wrong, so I cannot forgive myself and I'm not good enough. They go into that loop that something is not good with me and they just never come out of it. They live in a constant denial, or they punish themselves that they did something wrong. But the message is, I did something wrong. I just need to know that tomorrow or in the future, something like this happens. I need to know, should I stick to that same old pattern, or how can I improve upon myself? Let's say I came late for an event and I'm guilty. And if I'm guilty, if I constantly live with that guilt, I came late for that event for the rest of my life, the purpose of that guilt is not there. Rather, if I realize, okay, I'm guilty that I came late, from next time, how can I be on time? How can I make sure that I am, prioritizing myself at the same time I show up on time? Sometimes if you put a pressure on yourself, I have to always show up on time. And if you double book if you're closely, all the appointments come together and you really don't have breathing time in between, then more often you're setting yourself to be guilty constantly, because you will be ending up late. There'll be traffic. There'll be other people coming in between. So you realize that the day before, you plan your day in such a way that you show up on time. At the same time, you eliminate some of the meetings that are too close to yourself, too close to fill it up. So this way you realize the message of guilt is, I did break my standards, but now how do I uplift myself? Or at the same time, are these the standards that I need to follow? So this is how we need to understand. So again, I'm saying, if an emotionally intelligent person gets guilt, what he's trying to understand is, what standards did I break? Are these standards genuine? Should I really live up to these standards? And what must I do so that I don't break these standards anymore? So this is what an emotionally intelligent person will do. On the other hand, an emotionally not so intelligent person, I came late, and they'll keep just blaming themselves and the world and become a victim, and I can never be on time. And that going down the rabbit hole is when the emotional intelligence with low emotional intelligence can lead harm to us. Now, let's take an example of let's take, for example, frustration. Whenever you see somebody constantly getting frustrated over something, frustration is again a message trying to say, the approach that you are taking to get something done is not working. You need to think about a new approach, or see that there is some lack of information because of which you're not taking the right active action. So if a person is boiling the water, let's say at 95 degrees, and he's constantly complaining, whenever I boil water, it's not boiling. Of course, that person is going to get frustrated. It needs to reach 100 degrees. So the same way, if we are able to appreciate what the emotion is trying to tell us, if you're able to decode that, that is what we call as emotional intelligence. This is a trained skill. Just like how you develop your muscles, you can develop your emotional intelligent muscle. Always trying to understand if something triggers you, always go to the question. Don't ask, why is this person triggering me? Ask, what traits in that person and why is that trait triggering me to this kind of emotions? And when you ask this question with a very open heart and with a very open-minded question, usually you will get the answer. Maybe there is something correlating that is making me feel that something is wrong with me. That is my connection to that. And I need to change that approach. It's actually nothing wrong with me. It's just my past connections with something similar to this, like the Pavlovian dog. So we try to come out of that. Every time something triggers you, ask this, what is this trying to teach me and what is the message of this emotion that is giving me? That way, you slowly improve your emotional intelligence. In this way, what happens, your ability to let go of some memories that have some emotional charge will just become neutralized. That's what they say, Memory without an emotional charge is what we call as wisdom. Because we know that something happened at that time it hurt me, but now it's just a memory in my past. I'm not bothered about it anymore. And that is what is emotional intelligence. Your ability to just take the message and not take it personal and take that actionable insight. And when we do this on a regular basis, slowly we will up our emotional intelligence. And this has a profound impact on your health, your communication, your relationship, and your quality of sleep. I'm an Ayurvedic doctor, and why am I talking about emotional intelligence? The reason is I see a lot of patients who are dealing with chronic ailments, which has a lot of root cause through a suppressed emotion. Somewhere they did not get the right tool to deal with certain emotions, and that just suppressed and piled up, and it started showing up as some tumors or certain autoimmune conditions or stiffness or aches in the body. Because it's like if every thought has a storage in your body, like there are books like your body keeps a score, and when they come for an Ayurvedic treatment like a Panchakarma or other treatments where we do shamana type of therapies, we see how much their body is holding on to some of the suppressed emotions. And once they learn to dissolve these, the emotional charges with some of the memories or the traumas that has happened in the past, when they release this, how the body just let go of some of the energy blocks, and then it's just opening up, it's just diffusing some of the blocks, and they suddenly feel, I can breathe, I can walk, I can feel pain-free right now. So this is why having an emotional intelligence is one of the best skills that a person can have in the future. And remember, your physical health goes hand in hand with your emotional health. Now, when we say mental health, it's actually your emotional health. When we say I have a good mental stability and I have a good mental health, what that person is saying, I have a good emotional health. I have a good emotional intelligence. So this is the idea, the art of just taking the message of what this emotion is trying to say. If it is anger, somewhere somebody crossed my boundaries. But the first question I need to ask is, did I communicate these boundaries upfront? Or am I just expecting the world to be a psychic and they should know my boundaries upfront? Usually angry people, they are not good at expressing their boundaries upfront, and they expect the world should know their boundaries. And so anger is trying to teach them, you need to over-communicate about your boundaries very clearly. And every time something triggers you and it leads to anger, you need to learn, okay, this is where I need to learn to express this I need to express this explicitly upfront. Same way, if you take all the emotions, you take sadness, you take grief, you take melancholy, or you take joy, you take creativity, you take boredom, all of this, it's a signal to what state of energy my body is. See, when I'm sad, my energy is different. When I'm excited, my energy is different. So when I'm sad, the same problem that you see, you will respond differently. And when I'm excited, the same problem, I might respond it in a much different positive way. So that's why it's very important to keep your emotions in a good stage. And it doesn't mean you should not feel angry or you should not feel frustrated. It's very important you feel frustrated and angry, but in that process, immediately get the message and move out of it. But if you stay stuck there, it is not helping. So that's what it means to have emotional intelligence. I hope you enjoyed this episode.